Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're taking a trip back in time to revisit a day that, well, a lot of us probably would like to forget.
Yeah.
The day the email stopped. The infamous Microsoft Outlook outage of 2023.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Try not to.
When your calendar just vanished and you couldn't send a simple email.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah, fun times, right?
It's funny how, something like email can become so essential to our daily lives. It really shows you how much we depend on this technology, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, just think about it by like 9:00 a.m. Eastern time that day. A ridiculous 15 million users were just stranded in a digital no man's land. Their inboxes were locked, their calendars are just wiped clean. And forget about even trying to communicate.
Oh, yeah.
I bet even your grandma was texting you like, "Is Outlook down?"
Uh-huh. I'm sure she was. But the thing that really gets me is how could something like that even happen in the first place? It's just wild. Think about it like this one tiny little misconfigured update in Microsoft's Azure cloud system. And that just set off this chain reaction. It's almost like this little snowball rolling down a hill. And then suddenly, bam!
Avalanche.
It's an avalanche, burying everybody's reply all button.
So no rogue intern like tripping over a server cable this time, huh?
No, nothing that dramatic this time. You see, the truth is these cloud systems are just so incredibly complicated. It wasn't like one server just decided to take a break. It was this crazy domino effect that rippled through the entire network.
Oh, wow.
And that's what made it so tough to get things up and running. It was a huge mess to try and recover all that data.
Yeah, that makes sense. So does this whole thing mean that cloud systems are just like inherently prone to failing like this?
Oh,
Or is this just like a freak accident, a one-time thing?
That is a great question. And honestly, it's a really complicated one. On the one hand, you've got all these amazing benefits with cloud computing. It's scalable, it's flexible, it can do so much. But then on the other hand, you have stuff like this happening. And it really highlights just how easily things can go wrong and how quickly those failures can spread. Those little update required pop-ups that we all just love to ignore?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we should start paying a bit more attention to those, huh?
Right. Maybe those updates could actually save us from a future digital apocalypse.
Yeah.
So speaking of surviving in the digital wilderness,
Yeah.
we asked you guys to share your stories of how you made it through that day.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, some of them were pretty wild.
I bet people got creative when they couldn't just send an email, huh?
Oh, absolutely. You are not going to believe this.
Yeah.
We actually got voicemails from some listeners who were willing to share their experiences, ready to hear about a CEO who completely lost it.
Hit me with it.
All right, here's our first voicemail. All right, here we go.
So my CEO totally freaked out when Outlook went down. He ran around the office yelling, "W took the emails." It was hilarious because he kept trying to email IT to fix it using Outlook.
Oh, man. It's like trying to call 911 on a dead phone, right?
It's amazing how even when you're stressed out, you just forget the simplest things.
Totally. Okay, get ready for this next one. This one takes resourcefulness to a whole new level.
My coworker completely lost it when Outlook crashed, ran out of the office, came back an hour later with a pigeon in a cage. He said, "This is our new email system. HR is still investigating."
Carrier pigeons. You know, they say everything old is new again. Maybe he was onto something.
Well, I don't think carrier pigeons are going to replace email anytime soon. But hey, I got to give him points for creativity.
Right.
This whole outage really forced people to think outside the box, or maybe outside the inbox.
Exactly. Okay, but all jokes aside, let's actually talk about what we can do to be prepared the next time the internet decides to take a break. What are your top tips for surviving a digital outage?
Well, the most important thing is to have backups, right? You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So if Outlook goes down, what's your plan B? You got to think about things like Slack or Teams or even just texting and phone calls.
Yeah. But didn't Slack have problems that day too? It was like the whole internet was having a meltdown.
That's true. It just goes to show that you got to have a bunch of different options ready to go.
Right.
And there's some other things you can do too, like turning on offline mode in Outlook. So at least you can still see your old emails while you wait for everything to come back online. Oh, and of course, always back up your important data.
Okay, so those are all really practical tips. But, we can't resist a little fun, right?
Of course not.
In the middle of all the chaos that day, people's imaginations really went wild.
Oh, I bet.
You know what I'm talking about, conspiracy corner time.
Uh-huh.
What were some of the craziest theories you heard about what caused the outage?
Oh, boy. Where to even begin?
Uh-huh.
Well, one theory was that Microsoft did it on purpose, to make everyone use Teams.
Oh, yeah.
Classic create a problem then sell the solution kind of thing.
Like they were holding our inboxes hostage to get more team subscribers.
Exactly.
Wow. What else?
Okay, this one's a little out there. Some people were saying it was a sentient AI, like testing its power, just to remind us who's really in control.
Okay, that one's a little creepy, but kind of believable in a Black Mirror way.
Right.
Did anyone blame Mark Zuckerberg? It seems like he's the go-to scapegoat for anything tech these days.
Oh, of course. Some people were convinced that he was behind it all to promote his new platform, Threads.
Classic Zuckerberg. I have my own theory. I think it was all Clippy's revenge, finally snapping after years of being ignored and forgotten.
Okay, that's my new favorite theory. But, we gotta be real for a second. As fun as all these conspiracy theories are, there's no evidence for any of them. Sometimes technology just fails.
Right, glitches happen. Even to the big guys like Microsoft. So what did Microsoft actually do after the outage happened? Did they just shrug and say, oops?
Well, they did apologize publicly, and they paid out millions of dollars in credits to the people who were affected. It was a pretty expensive lesson for them to learn. And they also promised to put things in place to try and prevent it from happening again. Hopefully they kept that promise.
So what do you think is the biggest takeaway from this whole Outlook Armageddon?
I think it's a reminder that as much as we rely on technology, it's not perfect. We have to be prepared for those times when it lets us down.
Right.
Having a backup plan. Not just for communication, but for your data and your peace of mind, too. It's so important these days.
Yeah, I totally agree. So to any of our listeners out there who are still maybe having flashbacks to the Outlook outage, just remember you're not alone.
Yeah, we've all been there.
And if you have any funny stories or just crazy experiences from that day, we'd love to hear them. Share them in the comments below.
Yeah. Let's have a laugh about it together.
Because in the end, we're all in this together, right? Even when technology tries to tear us apart, we're more resilient than a misconfigured update. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy to think about, like we're so connected all the time. But what happens when those connections just disappear?
It really makes you think, huh?
Yeah, it's a little unsettling.
This whole thing really shows us how vulnerable we are when we depend on just one thing. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket and then, whoops, there goes the basket.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny to joke about carrier pigeons and AI taking over. But there's a serious lesson here about being prepared.
Yeah.
What can we do to make sure we're ready for anything?
Well, I think for most people, it starts with having different ways to communicate.
Right.
Don't just rely on one thing.
Right.
You got to be comfortable using other platforms like Slack or Teams, or even just texting or calling someone.
Yeah, sometimes the simplest way is the best way. And like you said before, always back up your important stuff. Nothing worse than losing everything because of a crash.
Oh, absolutely. Think of it like insurance for your digital life, cloud storage or an external hard drive. Those can really save you in a situation like this. And it's not just about individual people either. Businesses need to be ready too.
Yeah, I bet.
Can you imagine if a company lost all its emails and files? It would be a disaster.
Oh yeah, total chaos.
And it's not just about getting the data back either. They need to have a plan for how they're going to communicate. How do you keep everyone informed? What about clients and partners? There's a lot to think about.
So basically, you got to have a plan B, and maybe even a plan C and D, just in case.
Exactly. And it's not enough to just have a plan. You got to test it and make sure it still works because things are changing all the time.
That's true. I think this whole Outlook thing was a wake-up call for a lot of people. It made us realize how much we depend on technology and how to be smarter about using it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's about finding that balance. Using all the amazing things technology can do, but also being aware of its limits and being ready for when things go wrong.
Well said. I think that about wraps things up for us today. We covered a lot of ground, the technical side of the outage, the funny ways people dealt with it, and what we can learn from it all.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and hopefully our listeners learned some helpful stuff along the way.
I'm sure they did. And hey, if you're still getting flashbacks to that day, just remember you're not alone.
We've all been there.
And if you have any stories you want to share about your experience that day, whether it's funny or just crazy, we'd love to hear them. Leave a comment below.
Yeah, let's all have a laugh about it.
Because, hey, at the end of the day, we're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
Even when technology tries to pull us apart, we're tougher than a software glitch. That's fact.
That's for sure.
All right, that's a wrap for our deep dive into the Outlook outage. We'll catch you next time on the deep dive when we'll be exploring something new. Hopefully something that doesn't involve a global email meltdown.
See you next time, everyone.
Take care, everyone.